Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides. Can't Have Missing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. This is Hawk. You're a good girl. You're a good girl. Yes, a good pup. Oh, you're so pretty. You're so pretty. You got a lot of fans out there, Hawk. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing better than scratching the old noggin, huh? Yeah, it's a good girl. Oh, that felt good, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it's a good girl. She's got her summer coat. She's all nice and comfortable in the heat. She's all happy and clean. You're a good girl. He's a good girl. Thanks for being here, folks. You only are the ones that make this all happen, so I'm very indebted. A little shocked, I gotta say something. The biggest interview I've ever done in my life was the one about Colin Kelleher. And the shocking part about it is it was a 1 hour interview. Actually 1 hour and 5 minutes. Normally my shows that I put up in front of you are 33, 34 minutes. So it was almost double the time as one of my normal shows. With each video I put out, YouTube sends me analytics about the video. The length of time on average it is watched, the number of viewers that watched it, and they compare that to past videos. They said that that video was only watched on average for 35 minutes. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You see, they compensate the channel based on the number of minutes that videos are watched. The lower they keep that number down, the less they have to compensate for it. As good as that, now I'm not saying I was good, but as good as that video was in content, and the number of responses I had on that video from people saying, oh, that was a great interview. I loved every minute of it. I wish it went longer. I do not believe that people only watched it for 35 minutes. Sorry, I don't believe it. And that goes back to the censorship that's going on here. I've been told many times by some people that are much smarter than me about YouTube analytics, engineers, that there's no way I am getting credit for the amount of time that my videos are watched. Heck, if I got credit for the time just the other YouTubers who watch my videos and sell my content, if I got credit for those, I'd probably be way over the top right now. So that's my frustration, not with you, not in the least. But there's no way anyone I know believes those numbers. Dr. Kelleher rarely, if ever does an interview, especially that long. Sorry, that dog just don't hunt. Now, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the profile of missing people. We're not going to talk about specifically a missing person case. I'm going to walk you down a whole new aura that I've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. And it's going to start off today with a news article that came out of Alaska. It said U.S. Coast Guard helicopter crashes during training flight in Alaska. 4 crew members were injured Monday when a Coast Guard helicopter crashed during a routine training flight. It wasn't immediately clear how seriously they were hurt, but no one died in the crash. The MH-60 Jayhawk Hilo crashed several miles outside of Sitka in a sparsely populated area near Harbor Mountain. The coastal town sits on Baranof Island. The surrounding Pacific Ocean currents limit extreme temperatures, but deliver 100 inches of rain every year. Sitka is one of those towns where it never gets super cold or super hot. Well, it does get pretty warm in the summer, but it never gets super cold like the inland towns. Rescuers arrived at 11 a.m. about an hour after the crash and rushed all 4 crew members to Mount Edgecombe Medical Center in Sitka. The safety, well-being, and rescue of our crew members is our absolute immediate priority, the Coast Guard stated. The Coast Guard will investigate the crash. It's not clear what caused it. The helicopter crashed following a string of 3 major plane crashes this month in Alaska. I printed out 3 different articles trying to say what they said that might have been different. One said that watchstanders in the Arctic District Command Center received a report of the crash at 10:07 a.m. Cause of the crash is under investigation. Why is this important? I think, well, Dave, things happen all the time. Yeah, they do. But there's one group of aircraft that really aren't supposed to ever crash. That's these. The Jayhawks are some of the primary search and rescue helicopters used all over the world by the Coast Guard to search for missing people. They're medium range and go pretty far out there. A lot of times when, say, a deadliest catch boat starts to go down, the Coast Guard sends helos out to get them. The amount of risk that those Coast Guard military men do and women do on a regular basis, flying out in horrific weather to save people, is off the chart heroic. I mean, I read about what they do and it's astounding. That's why the equipment they have has to be unbelievably great. They do a job that really nobody else can do. And you rarely ever hear about a Coast Guard plane or helicopter going down. Their pilots are top of the line, the best. So when I read about this, I just prayed that nobody got killed, and apparently everyone survived, so that's good. On a routine training flight, obviously there's nothing routine about training. But it is Alaska. Why is that important? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is an article, November 4th, 1978. The headlines, 1 a day dies in Alaska in air crashes. I bet you didn't know that. Let me read this to you. So the rescue center for Alaska is Elmendorf Air Force Base. It says, to Alaskans, getting into the cockpit of a light plane is not much different from getting behind the wheel of a pickup truck. Their difference can be deadly. Alaska has averaged almost 1 death a day in aviation accidents since August 25th. This was written on November 4th. More than a dozen persons are missing in the Alaskan wilderness. More than a dozen persons are... the map of the Alaska at the Elmendorf Air Force Rescue Center is littered with red pins marking the location wreckage of 1,370 planes yet to be salvaged. But what that does mean is that they were found. Rescue Center officials, along with sportsmen, a spokesman for the Federal Aviation Administration and the NTSB, say they are unable to explain the 49th state high crash rate. Friends, I want you to sit down, open both ears real clearly, and understand this. Rescue Center officials, along with spokesmen for the Federal Aviation Administration and the NTSB, say they are unable to explain the 49th state's high crash rate. For almost the last 3 years, I have studied Alaska. Why? From the time I first went up there on vacation, on a cruise, and most recently when I went with the cruise, Alaska Bigfoot Cruise, I've been asked a series of questions about Alaska that stimulated my mind to a great degree. And I started to dig into it. Kept it all to myself. I'm going to start coming out with it slowly. And I want you to pay attention to what I found, because it's stunning. They said flying here is not much more hazardous than flying in any other mountainous or snowy states. What's different is that the flying is a major means of transportation. The FAA accident coordinator said if you want to travel places in Alaska, you either go by dog sled or a little airplane, or you just don't go. Well, that's not true, because you could also go by snowmobile if that's winter. 1 in 46 Alaskans has a pilot's license, compared with 1 in 300 people in the rest of the United States. An interesting statistic. So Alaska has a much higher percentage of the population with pilots than to the rest of the U.S. On sunny days, light planes over the skies in Anchorage look like mosquito swarms. There are 15 airports in a 10-mile radius. 3 military bases, a small airport at Lake Hood, and Anchorage International Airport together conduct 1 million flying operations each year. In September, 2 light planes collided midair over the city. Anchorage International, one of the largest cargo hub airports in the world. Why? Because it's positioned up there in North America, close to Russia. We're going to talk about that more in time. You can start a car up and drive it after it has been sitting in the garage for several months, but an airplane needs careful maintenance. Officials said sloppy maintenance can be a cause for more than one Air Alaska crash. I've said before, I grew up with my dad having a plane. Every time we went out to that airplane, my dad was fastidious. Walked around the plane, moved the flaps, drained gas to make sure there's no water accumulating in it. Check the oil, make sure it's level and high. Check the prop. Check the battery. Took a half an hour to walk around that plane and do all this every time. He had a checklist to make sure he never missed anything. Alaska's vastness is treacherous with weather, and sometimes primitive airport facilities make it a dangerous place for overconfidence. Okay, but not all of Alaska's bush planes land at airports. See, they have these big bush tires that they can put on these small planes. And they actually land on riverbanks. Oh yeah, pretty normal. It's not abnormal at all. And in fact, the Alaska State Troopers do that as well. So they don't really need an airport. A veteran pilot, Bob Reeve, who founded an airline that flies in the stormy Aleutian Islands, said pilots could eliminate their troubles by strategic retreat in the face of storms. He says he's lived to be 78 because, quote, I adhere to that well-known maneuver, the 180-degree turn. What he went on to say was, if bad weather faced him, he didn't challenge it. He turned around and went the other way. Remember bad weather. An official in one agency that is responsible for aviation safety said, overeager passengers can put pressure on experienced bush pilots. Quote, a hunter from out of state has 1 week of vacation and he wants to go out and get a sheep, the official said. The pilot says it's not safe to fly, but the guy says, you fly me or I'll find somebody else who will. End of quotes. Hunters from out of state are found frequently in Alaska's casualty lists. 5 hunters from La Crosse, Wisconsin and Stoddard, Wisconsin were killed in a crash in mid-September. Bob Mills of Milo, Michigan, left Anchorage September 10th in a Cessna 185 and is still missing. The body of his hunting partner, Ed Gasco of Fairfield, Michigan, was found recently in the waters of Cook Inlet. Article goes on and on and on, and it explains a scenario that goes back to Rescue Center officials, along with spokesmen for the Federal Aviation Administration and the NTSB, say they are unable to explain the state's 49th high crash rate. Therein lies the corner of my research. Because they're talking about the 70s, 80s, 90s, up till today. Well, I did a lot of research, as you guys know I do. And I went back into the 40s, 30s, 50s, 60s. And I noticed, unusually, that a lot of super experienced military pilots disappeared. Well, that doesn't fit the scenario of people hurrying to get somewhere. Military's never in a hurry. Military pilots, most of them super experienced, from what I found. September 12th, 1951. The headlines: Alaska air crashes called bad luck. Major General William D. Old, commander of the Alaskan Air Command, said today that the unprecedented number of air crashes in the territory since July 21st were just a string of bad luck. In less than 2 months, 15 air mishaps left a total of 98 military men dead or missing. Oh, what? It's bad luck. Yeah, it's just bad luck. July 16th, 1995. There are nearly 10,000 aircraft in Alaska, one for every 59 residents, and 14 times as many per capita as the rest of the USA. Lake Hood in Anchorage is the busiest seaplane base in the world. Seaplane base, they land on water, take off on water. And that's important to understand that. Because when you're flying around on floats are the things you land on that make the plane float. When you're flying around on floats, and so much of Alaska is water, if the engine stops, planes are meant to glide. And you have floats on, you'd assume there's a pretty good chance that you're going to land that plane and survive, right? Right? September 2nd, 1951, Alaska air crashes take 13 more lives. 13 more servicemen were dead or missing today in the 8th and 9th of a series of disastrous Alaska air crashes. The Tanaga crash and the disappearance of a C-47 transport plane carrying at least 4 people raised the toll and dead in all plane accidents. Remember what the general said? Oh, just bad luck. Is that the most idiotic, stupid, demeaning statement a military man can say about the loss of service people? It says the Navy plane crashed on and probably 2 more crashed. C-47 last heard from when it radioed a CAA station in Bethel shortly after it left Platinum on a flight to King Salmon, 400 miles southwest of Anchorage. The crash of a Navy patrol, it goes on and on. Well, as you come forward from the 50s, you step into the 70s. And from 70 to 85, the worst Alaska air crashes were tallied. September 4th, 1971, an Alaska Airlines hit a mountain en route to Juneau from Seattle, and it was a Boeing 707, big jet. 111 killed. November 27th, 1970, a Capital International plane went off the end of the runway in Anchorage, DC-8, 47 killed. A Ryanair airplane, November 87, 16 killed, crashed short of a runway in Homer. September 6, 77, 13 killed, slammed into Mount Iliamna. A Navy transport near Adak, December 73, 10 killed. It was a C-18. February 85, North Pacific near Soldotna, Beechcraft twin disappeared, 9 dead. June 1980, a Ryanair, fog-shrouded beach, 80 miles east of Noma, Cessna 402, 8 dead. September 12, 75, 8 dead, Ketchum Air. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Now, plane crashes have a high incident of investigation. In fact, everyone supposedly does get investigated by professionals to determine what happened. When officials say that they can't give a reason for the number of crashes, that should bother you. It should bother everyone. Well, when I first read that, it bothered the heck out of me. And that's what started me on my flight here. Let's go back and think about profile points for a second. You know, the ones that are in my books where I talk about, well, one of the top ones is always weather. Weather either during the event happens or during the search that causes the person to disappear or inhibits the search. Water. Water has always been the key. Water will always be the key. People found in or near water. Oh, Dave, that's right, huh? Missing for one, a sobering coincidence. Let's not forget that one. No scent trail by canines. How about no radar trail by the FAA of the plane that went missing? Oh, wow. That kind of relates, huh? Remember I talked to you about always carrying a personal locator beacon when you're out hiking. Well, when I was young and my dad had a plane, he purchased an aircraft locator beacon. And it was the size of one of those old cell phones, large. But we carried it every time we flew. And you put it on the standby mode, which means you're flying. And if there's an accident, the centrifugal force of the impact activates the locator beacon automatically. You don't even have to touch it. Well, what would happen if there's a whole series of planes that had locator beacons, but they never went off? Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got a lot of those. So my research in the last 3 years about this involved planes, blimps, helicopters, aircraft in general. I don't know if you remember, but I did a video a few years back about a blimp that left Moffett Field in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it took off, and it was, this is back before we used planes to fly the coast of California looking for submarines. But it was flying off of San Francisco, monitoring the coast for the military. Well, suddenly some people in the water off the coast saw that blimp suddenly go, and it started to go up into the clouds. It ended up crashing in Daly City, just south of San Francisco. Nobody was on board. Yet it left with 2 pilots. They were never found. There was never any explanation where they went. What happened there? Well, that's pretty interesting, Dave. Yeah, I thought so. And that applies to what we're doing here today and where we're going to go with this. Remember in Michigan, in the last year and a half, I've done a series of videos about planes that disappeared in Michigan. Water, Michigan. Weather, Michigan. Great Lakes, Michigan. Planes never found, Michigan. Triangles. Yeah, there's a Michigan Triangle there where there's a whole series of planes. There's a Northwest Orient airliner that disappeared off the coast of Michigan and was never found. One of the biggest searches in history. Was never found. And guess what? One of the Civil Air Patrol planes flying to look for that also disappeared. You didn't hear about that, though. Yeah, true story. When a search plane disappears looking for a plane that's missing, oh, that's weird. Yeah, they steal Josh Gates in his show on the Discovery Channel. They did a mission looking for that Northwest Orient plane. And they highlighted a team that had been side scanning the coast for years looking for it. Can't find it. Gone. Big jet. Gone. Where'd it go? Yeah, where'd it go? So, triangles. Talked about the Michigan Triangle. Bermuda Triangle. If you remember the history of that, an entire group of planes, military planes, disappeared in a training mission off the coast of Florida in the Triangle. They were never found. A lot of times in Alaska, these planes go down, go missing, transporting hunters, just like the article stated. Well, I find that interesting because remember I told you that hunters were a subset of the missing. Well, maybe whatever wanted the hunters on the ground couldn't get them, so now they're going to get them in the air. I don't know. People have always asked me about missing military personnel. Well, I found a whole bunch of missing military personnel. A whole bunch that have never been found. You're going to hear about that in the coming months. And then let's think about the pilots. What's the profile of a pilot? Well, many of them have a military background. Many of the private pilots, bush pilots. Most pilots are healthy. How do you know that, Dave? Because you have to pass a flight medical to become a pilot. And you have to do it regularly and continue to pass it, otherwise you can't get your pilot's license. Pilots spend much of their life in the clouds and at elevation. They fly over extremely remote areas and they're by themselves. Point of separation when they leave the airport, when they drop off their passengers. Most of them are very well educated, analytical, have a high degree of common sense. So think about that. Think about that profile. Now, I've kind of wedged your way into Alaska. Oh, and you're going to hear a lot more about Alaska. Oh, yeah. So, Alaska, it's twice the area of the state of Texas. 665,000 square miles. Huge does not even begin to explain Alaska. Huge, huge, huge. Coastline, 6,640 miles long. That's almost half of the entire U.S. coastline. Wrap your head around that. It's home to half of the world's glaciers, What are glaciers? Water. It has a population of only 731,000. And it gets 2 million visitors annually. I read that and I was a little surprised. Heck, Glacier National Park, right where I live, gets 3 million visitors annually. The whole state of Alaska only gets 2 million? Doesn't seem like that much. The highest peak in Alaska is Denali at over 20,000. And the state has 5 distinct climate zones. Coastal is one I think about most. Last time I was in Alaska, I spent time actually on the water, on the ocean water fishing. Spent time on a river fishing. It's estimated that there are over 3 million lakes in Alaska. So is there a lot of fresh water? Oh yeah. They have 8 national parks. There's a few of those national parks that don't get hardly any visitors at all. There's 80 million acres of protected land. Alaska has its own time zone and actually has 2 time zones, but yeah. The biggest city is Anchorage. That has 40% of the entire state's population. I've been to Anchorage several times. If you're going to go and visit, don't even waste your time visiting Anchorage. I'm going to tell you straight up front, Anchorage is a nice city. Not worth spending a day there, though. Not when you have the rest of the state to see. Trust me. Trust me. It's got big city problems. You don't want to be there. 1/3 of Alaska is located north of the Arctic Circle. Now that's an interesting part of all of this. The Arctic has always been aligned with the unusual. If you study explorers' trips to the Arctic, they claim to see unusual things, have unusual things happen. The National Park Service manages 18% of the public lands above the Arctic Circle. That's a lot. All areas of Alaska have lots of water, salt and fresh. Water has been the key. It will always be the key to this. I know many of you don't agree. It always has been. If you don't believe me, keep studying the topic. Remember, I made a movie where we went to Wyoming. You can watch all these for free on Tubi, T-U-B-I. They all start with Missing 411. And a man was trying to find water on his farm in Michigan. And he said that he couldn't find it. He drilled several times. Finally, the driller said, "I'm not drilling on your property anymore." And the man got frustrated. He says aliens came down and pointed to a place on the ground on his farm and said, "Mine to mine, dig there, you'll find water." Why would they do that? He asked the driller to come back out and he goes, "I'm not going to waste my money anymore. No, I won't do that." He ended up buying an old tank engine, building his own drill, drilled down and hit a gusher of water. True story. The story was so odd, a film crew from LA went up to interview the man and read about this, have the story publicized. One of the videographers that went up to from LA to this property contacted me after he saw the movie and said, "Hey Dave, I was on that crew that went up there. And just so you know, we filmed UFOs in the sky over this guy's farm while we were there." He goes, "So do I believe the guy?" Heck yeah, I believe the guy. I saw it. Now, the water that he hit, therein lies the key. Why would the aliens want him to dig and bring the water up from there? I explain that in the movie. I explain where the water came from in the movie. And all of this is relevant, folks. It's all relevant. And as I bring you month by month closer to really what I'm going to present to you that will really blow your socks off, please be patient. This is like one of those stepping stones to understanding. So, I appreciate you being here. Please make sure you share the video. Make sure you're subscribed. Tons of people have been forcibly unsubscribed. Missing411.com is our website. My newest video, Missing 411 National Parks, Washington State. You can watch it on Amazon now. Please go over there and watch it. It's got great reviews. You will like it. Be safe. Be kind. Kindness is important. Paulides out.